What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the UNC Football Show, brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, not too far away from 14,000 subscribers, so hopefully we'll hit that number soon. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me, as he always does, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, we're here for, like I said, another episode of the UNC Football Show. We're going to be giving some spring updates throughout here, obviously some storylines since we last came on the football show. I believe it's been a few weeks now and only 10 days away from the spring game. We'll hit on that a little bit later as well as that set for April 15th. The announcement for that came out earlier this week too. So I know you talked to the coordinators, Gene Chizik and Chip Lindsey, on Tuesday, recording this on Wednesday evening. And what was it, 8 or 9 players on Saturday as well, following
we had
the
practice. Four players each of the last 2 Saturdays. We had Mac last Tuesday.
So we've a lot of it, like I said, just a lot of media availability since we've jumped on here last. So a lot of talking points and a lot of things we'll be hitting on throughout the podcast. AJ, I want to start on the defense. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, because I think from some of the quotes that Chizik did give on Tuesday, some really interesting kind of storylines and things to take away from it. I want to start with the jack position in particular, is that's a big talking point, and obviously with Armani Gaynor coming in as well, the Florida State transfer. A lot of hype and a lot of curiosity around what kind of player he can be. But essentially Chizik saying, Carolina's in a really good place at the jack position. K'Mon Rucker has been off the charts, he said, and Amari Gaynor's essentially been attached to his hip is one thing Chizik said, which we noticed at the first open practice a few weeks ago, as he's kind of learning that position, and obviously is a big reason he came to North Carolina in the first place. So talk to me a little bit about that jack position, because like I said, it seems like Carolina's in a pretty good position there.
Well, starting with Gaynor, I was watching him just follow Gene around. He would do a rep, and then he'd go right to Gene, and Gene would do all of his coaching, and he wouldn't stop coaching and just talk to Amari. He's coaching, he's walking around, and Amari's right there, and he's talking to Amari, who was getting mental reps when he wasn't getting his actual physical reps, because there's a lot to learn. And I do think this is also a case where he's the consummate football junkie. Think of Sam Howell in the film room. Mm-hmm. Well, that's Gaynor on the field, just trying to learn and get an edge with every little thing that he can. Where a lot of really, really good, accomplished, hardworking athletes might at some point be satisfied with, I think I've done enough here for now. Like, Gaynor doesn't have that. He approaches everything. This was a great quote by Gene. He approaches everything like it's always 4th and 1.
Mm-hmm. That was a really good
and he's
quote.
On defense. So he's got such a sense of urgency. And I love another word that Gene has used, and also Amari used last week when we talked to him, several days ago, I guess, when we talked to him, the word violent. Mm-hmm. Gene says he's a violent player. And Amari he reminds me of Jawad Williams, kind of talks like Jawad Williams, if y'all remember him in basketball at Carolina, sort of monotone, straightforward, mm-hmm. but there's lots of dog beneath that facade. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about his game, and he just casually throws in the word violent. So I asked him, I said, well, football's a violent sport. So when you say violent and Gene says it about you, what is that level of violence? It's just making plays, he says. Well, Gene said, that's when Gene went on to the description of it's always 4th and 1. And he even said he plays with intensity, and you could see Gene's face if you watch the video. It's like he was getting intense, thinking about how intense Amari Gaynor is. So what you have in him and what you have in the jack position with K'Mon Rucker is 2 violent guys. Yeah. And 2 extremely high IQ guys. And that's what you need. We're still learning about what Gene's vision of the jack is. And I think Noah Taylor was a good example, because he was highly athletic, highly intelligent, and he was pretty violent. But I think there's another level of violence here with Gaynor. And we've all seen K'Mon Rucker. Yeah, he was the true freshman that played the most snaps among all those ballyhooed class he was in. The first game against Syracuse a few years ago, he played 26 snaps, I think it was, and he made plays. So he's a guy that people just kind of yawned when he committed. And he's a perfect example when people get so fixated on recruiting rankings and stuff like that. Don't worry about it. If a dude could play, he could play, and the staff fully going to bring in dudes who could play. And Rucker has been as consistently good as anybody the last 3 years on defense. And now splitting time with Gaynor, competing with Gaynor in that position is going to make each of them better. And I think it's going to be interesting because Gene said that they're going to find ways to get them both in the field. They have packages for both of them to play. And Gaynor could still step in and play some linebacker too. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is sort of this is more a hybrid linebacker than the hybrid under Bateman was. This is definitely more linebacker oriented. So Carolina fans got to be excited. I know that Rucker kind of initially doesn't sort of fit the suit, if you will, but that's because maybe we didn't really know exactly what the Jack was. Mm-hmm. He's athletic. He's down to 254, I think it is, he told me. And although he said it's not by intention, but he moves so well and he's so smart that he anticipates well. So that's the extra step of quickness that you can't measure. I remember, and you see the hat back there, Cal Ripken was such a good shortstop, not because he had not because he was Ozzie Smith, right? It's because he knew the hitters and he guessed well, he played them well. So balls might be hit toward the middle and he's right there because he was always so positioned well. Kamen's like that as a defensive player because he guesses well, he anticipates well, he reads well, so he gets off the snap going in the right direction almost every time. So that adds a split second of quickness to him. So he's actually a bouncier athlete than some people may think if they're just solely watching him and don't know what else is going on around him. So because of that, I think these are the perfect Jacks. They both could pass rush. They both can cover. They could play together. And what Amari told me a while ago about one of the reasons he went to Carolina was to learn a Jack because it's more multi-dimensional, more multifaceted than the linebacker spot he played at Florida State. And he said, look, when I'm on the field, I want that offensive tackle not knowing if I'm going to drop in coverage or if I'm going to rush. He says, when that happens and I get efficient at all things to that point, he says, then I have the advantage every snap. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're in good shape there. Mm-hmm. I think that's a position of strength for Carolina right now. I think it'll be a position of strength for Carolina when they get into the season. I don't think there's a ton of depth behind them just yet, especially with Hamrick out for the year, but they like what's behind them. But they got two dudes there that are the definition of dude.
Yeah, Rucker's been amazing since he got here. He just seems like he always makes plays. And when we were at the open practice a few weeks ago, some of the biggest plays that stood out were him making them. So again, yeah, I think that Jack position's in a really, really good spot. We'll talk about the defense as a whole in just a second, AJ. Before we do that, I want to talk about that safety position a little bit more, as I know that's kind of a position there. Got some new faces in there kind of working. You've also got some guys out, Gio Biggers being one of them throughout the spring who's not participating. So some opportunities for a guy like DJ Jones who's moved over from the running back position to the safety room and is still kind of working on both sides of the ball a little bit to maybe step in and make an impact. You've obviously as well got Jaquarius Conley back, who Gene Chizik kind of ranted and raved about earlier this week as well with the progress he's made and obviously not wearing a knee brace and back to 100%, it looks like. So talk to me a little bit more about that safety position and how that's shaken out so far.
They've got a lot of bodies back there, guys that I think have potential and talent, and they have a lot of new faces being Derek Allen from Georgia Tech. He's an example. And Chizik's sort of calling JQ a new face because he didn't really get to see him much last year. And he's been working his way back. Now he's healthy, but he's still going through the process of there's the next mental hurdle. Antoine Green's a perfect example of that. The body was healthy, but the mental hurdle took like 2 more years.
Yeah, it's tough with that
before
knee,
before he became an NFL guy. So it's something that JQ's working through now. One thing I noticed at practice last week that he wasn't wearing the wrap, brace, or not a brace, but a wrap around his left knee. He had it at the beginning of spring practice. He's not wearing that anymore, which is a fantastic sign. And also, it's them freeing him to just, keep coming out here, getting your reps, and be you. Mm-hmm. And eventually, the guy that we saw blossoming before the injury is the player that probably should resurface. And what it is he's a guy that can obviously play the ball. He can cover, and he's very good coverage back there at safety, but he's another guy who can play the run. One of the things that was missing last year was the secondary didn't play the run very well. What you have now with him, if he's in a strong role, in a role where he's playing a lot. Will Hardy's a guy who can play the run. He showed that last year late in the season. It's no coincidence that when Hardy was back there at safety, the defense played better late in the year. And I think you'll see that with Elijah Huzzy as well. He can play the run at corner. So other safeties, I really think with DJ Jones, it's an interesting thing there because they're grading him so different than the rest of the guys because he came over from running back because they have such a full room at running back, even with the injuries over there right now, that they want to get DJ on the field. And this is a deal where they went to him and they asked him about it. And he thought about it and said, yeah, because he's a team guy. He's a guy a lot of people expected to hit the portal because he wants to run the ball somewhere. He wants to get his degree. He wants to help a football program any way he can. Now, does he stay there? It depends on what happens after spring practice. If anybody in that room either gets hurt and can't go, or maybe somebody leaves, then perhaps DJ may go back over there to running back. But they like the progress he's made. They've had 10 practices at the time of this recording. So he's had some off-season stuff, work over at the facility with the players when they go over there and do work on their own in some film room. And now he's had 10 practices, which is not nearly enough time to get a handle whether or not he can play that position in college, because it is very different in college. But they love the potential. And wouldn't it be something? You know, we've seen North Carolina have guys go from offense to defense before and do pretty well.
Yeah.
And Chad Surratt's earning an NFL paycheck. So, and he was a guy people said absolutely couldn't do it. So I wouldn't put anything past DJ. He's a tough dude. He's a hard worker, and he had the courage to make this move this late in his college career, which I think he should be commended for. So I do think that position group has a giant question mark over it, just because I believe there's going to be a lot of competition.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think Will Hardy will have one of those spots. And then there's competition really for the other three, because they're going to play backups in both spots a lot as well. And I can see a guy like Chapman doing the star thing and also doing safety. And if they have attrition at corner, I can see him moving over to corner. He'll be sort of a jack of all trades in the secondary.
Yeah, no doubt. It's good that they have competition back there as well, because it usually can really help bring out the best in people and help set other people apart. And you'll really know by the time the first game comes around, you have to earn that starting position too. So they'll have a lot of depth there as well, which I think is a big positive. Real quickly, I want to ask you about this kind of a guy that in a little ways has gone under the radar because we haven't been able to talk about him in a while. Tamari Fox, another guy that I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, and essentially said, you know, it's almost like a new recruit coming in because he hasn't played in so long. But on the flip side of that, it's not like a freshman coming in who hasn't been in the weight room. It's a guy hasn't been able to play in a year, who comes back to the program, who's one of, if not the strongest guy on the team, and who also has a lot of college experience in his time in North Carolina. So talk to me about him coming back and the importance of having him. Because again, I think it's just a massive addition down there on the defensive line.
Two guys missing on last year's defense, it shouldn't be overlooked amidst all the criticism of last year's defense, is Tamari Fox up front and J.Q. Conley.
Big misses, man.
So Tamari was able to practice some during the suspension, but they couldn't use them. And obviously we've already addressed JQ. So picking them up, it's kind of like getting two guys in the portal.
It kind of is, yeah.
But they know everything. But they know everything you're doing. So imagine if a guy like Tamari Fox was available in the portal and you picked him up. People are like, wow. Not that Tamari Fox is going to play 15 years in the NFL or anything like that, but he's a very good college player, strongest guy in the team. Mm-hmm. He's an IQ guy. He's a grinder guy. He's going to be in that room all the time. When you're not playing and you can't play for the reason he couldn't play and everything, I think sometimes it's hard to lead. It's hard for the younger guys to look at you and say, well, I'm going to follow this dude, because the other thing that's on the other side of their thinking there is that, well, he's not even playing right now. So he's kind of out of sight, out of mind in a way. I do think that he adds a lot of gravitas to that group, which is older now. I mean, they're a much older group, but I think having a guy like him who doesn't shy away from telling teammates what they need to hear sometimes, and who is really an underrated player. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that he's one of those dudes, sort of like Rucker, in the sense that if you lined up all the guys on the defensive line and you put them in order, who's going to play the longest in the NFL? Tamari Fox, it's going to take a while before you get to him, right? But he could end up being the most consistent producer of that group. I think that the potential that he has that kind of season is there. Now, Some people could say that's a positive because Tamari's playing well and he's given them something they didn't have last year. Some people might say that's a negative because isn't it time for Jahvaree Ritzie to be that guy? Miles Murphy, he's healthy now. Isn't it time for him to be the NFL guy he thought he was going into last season? What about Travis Shaw? KBJ's healthy now. So I think there's both ways to look at it. In my opinion, take what you can get from Tamari, and it's the other guy's responsibility to be as good as they're supposed to be as well. He's one dude. Well, there's three guys on defense that are maxing out. Cedric Gray, Kamen Rucker, and I think Tamari Fox is close to that. I project that he will. I can't say he is because he didn't play last season, but having him up front is really, really big because there's a lot of snaps there, and it's a guy who plays low. He comes off the ball hard. I think Gene called it, he's got short area quickness, which is a new term we're hearing more and more now about guys. And by the way, he said Travis Shaw has short area quickness as well. And they've been very impressed with Travis so far this spring. So Tamari, getting him back is huge. And he could sort of give them a little bit of what Ray Vahasek gave them as far as maturity, realness, if you will. Like he's a guy who understands reality and he'll speak it. And he's a glass chewer.
Yeah,
like Vahasek was. And you need a glass chewer up there. And Tamari gives them all those things.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Seems like you can't get rid of those Foxes, can you, AJ? Just from Tamon to Tamari, man. I think there's been a Fox in the program for about 10 years now. It's pretty wild to see, especially
Tamon's first game was against Georgia. Was Kirby's first game as Georgia's coach.
I was at that game. Yeah, good Lord. That feels like it was
in the Georgia Dome. He started.
I know.
And he started the next week at Illinois.
I know.
Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback.
That was what, 2016?
2016.
Yeah. It's amazing, man. I mean, again, we're going on what, 7-8 years. You've had a Fox in the program. Again, it's just kind of wild to think about when you think about it. Real quickly, AJ, last thing on the defense before we flip it over to offense. Interesting quote from Gene Chizik in your write-up, and I'm going to read it out real quick until he talking about kind of the whole defense and their progress so far. He said, I expect us to live up to what our athletic potential is. We've got a lot of really good athletes out there. We have to play better with more consistency. We are definitely doing that right now. There's no question in my mind. We are way ahead of where we were this time last year, which I think is big. And I think shouldn't be a surprise because when you think Gene came in and kind of had to implement his defense and figure it out what kind of personnel he had in the spring more than just trying to build the defense to what it now that he understands it and was able to bring some guys in and kind of has more of an idea of what he's working with and what he wants to do with this defense as a whole. I don't think it should be a surprise that we're hearing that, but I think it's also a big positive because again, I keep saying it every podcast, I think, and I've said it many times, you're going to get tired of me saying it throughout the offseason. I don't think it's an outlandish statement to say when you look at how good Carolina's been offensively for the most part over the last few seasons, they're really just a slightly above average defense away from, in my opinion, from being able to, win potentially 10 games for multiple seasons in a row. That's what I think. So if they can get to that point, I think they're in a really good position. And I think that is a positive quote to hear from Gene because I think Gene is a guy who keeps it real. I don't think he's a guy that's just going to, talk up his defense to talk up his defense. If he's not been happy with what he's seeing, I think he would tell us. So I think it is a positive, and we'll have to see how this defense continues to develop throughout the spring and the fall. But it seems like they're at least in a pretty good place right now.
They are, and I think people need to understand that a coach, what he says after the 10th practice of the spring, he's basing his plaudits on being 10 practices in the spring. So I ran Gene's report, and a few people on our boards like, we heard that last season. Well, let's remember it's not October. It's early April. So they always operate in the world of the process. As soon as one season ends, they begin the process of the next season. So that's where they are right now. Now, what backs up what he said? There's a veteran at every starting spot on defense, with the exception of where Will Hardy will be. And the reality is, I think Will is a mental veteran. He's been getting mental football reps since he was 10 years old. So he knows the game. His dad's a coach. He knows the game. He could probably teach it to a lot of these guys already. And he's a good player. He played a lot of key situations last year. He was a third down defender. So he played in intense downs, very important down, get off the field situations a lot. So whatever his snap count was for the year, I think he's more experienced than what that would indicate. But everywhere else, even with in most spots with the second guy at each of those positions, there's some experience. So I think that's part of why this is the case. And I also think that there's just high-end smart guys. I mentioned Fox, Rucker, Gaynor, Gray. Power Eccles is another guy whose football IQ is off the charts. He's been thinking the game for years. Elijah Huzzy, everybody's raving about his football IQ and his instincts and how he matches the instincts with the IQ, and it's a perfect fit. And he's going to be an example this next season of why you can get guys from FCS programs to step in and help a Power 5 right away, and he'll be an example of that. So I think that Gene believes that this is a smarter defense than it was a year ago. The football IQ is higher. I think the care factor is higher. I think the mental reps that this group gets are better than what they got at this time a year ago. They're going to be ahead because it was new a year ago, but I think they're more ahead, more advanced from where he may have expected 10 practices in. That's all from the mental stuff mainly. Ultimately, the physical stuff has to get it done, and they're a long way away from that, and he acknowledges that. But you want to be absolutely rock solid mentally at the end of spring practice, because that mental stuff will carry through the offseason. If there's a void there, then that will carry through the offseason too. So then they start fall camp behind mentally. So I think he believes the defense will start exactly where it needs to be or even ahead mentally when fall camp starts. Then they'll work out a lot of the physical stuff over for a month before they play the Gamecocks.
Yeah, again, it's good to hear, Gene saying that. I think fans will be excited. And I know it's been said before, but you made a great point. It really wasn't said as much in the spring last year because of the implementation process that had to take place. A lot of experience, a lot of guys been there, done that. And again, let's not forget, we've talked about it ad nauseum, AJ. It kind of goes under the radar because Carolina lost, their last 4, but the defense did improve throughout the season. The defense was trending this way. The offense was trending that way. Changes have been made on the offensive side. Defenses kind of remain the same despite some analysts coming in. So I think it is a group people should be excited about, not just like, well, they haven't been good the last few years, so screw them. No, I think there is improvements can be made, and I think they will be better this season. AJ, real quickly, we'll switch to the offense, but I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, myperfectfranchise.net. So guys, it's simple. It really is. I'm gonna spell it out for you. If you're sick of your job, or maybe you're in the corporate world right now, you want a little bit of a side gig just to bring in a little extra income. You've been thinking about it, but you haven't pulled the trigger yet. Or heck, maybe you're just looking to find a new career path fresh out of college, or again, just looking to switch your job up completely. You can do that at myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky, the number one thing that you'll notice about him if you do sit down and talk to him, he's as normal as it gets. He's a normal guy. He's a really laid back guy. He's a really nice guy as well. And he was in the corporate world, said, you know what? I want to do something different. I want to be my own boss. I want to have unlimited PTO. I want to be able to travel when I want to travel. And he did this same process by himself, and now, owns and manages multiple franchises. And we were talking to him last week. AJ kind of travels and does what he wants on the side as well. So pretty cool lifestyle. I'm a little bit jealous if I'm being honest. AJ,
his franchises, by the way, dumpsters and porta potties.
Who would have thought?
Basically,
who would have thought? You know what I mean?
People think of franchise. They think of Apple Annie's in a mall, or fast food, but it's all kinds of
something
stuff
like that. Yeah, it's so many different things. So guys, give
him a call, talk to him, and it's for free, and he'll have a good conversation with you. He's a regular dude. And see if there's something there for you.
Yeah, no doubt. Been a rival subscriber for over 22 years as well. Massive Texas fan, so got a lot of reverence and love for Mac Brown. So make sure you talk that with him as well. And you can even go to his website, myperfectfranchise.net, link below, and get on his calendar through that as well. So check him out, myperfectfranchise.net. All right, AJ, let's switch to the offense. I want to start with the backup QB position battle, because I think it's one that obviously Drake May is going to be the guy, and he's a really, really good player. And, Carolina's in a really good spot at that quarterback position. But one that really hasn't been talked about is the battle for the second string job. And that is vitally important. Connor Harrell, Tad Hudson's are kind of the guys duking it out right now. I know from what we've heard, especially from Chip Lindsey, it seems like it's a battle that's going to continue into the fall. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But what are your thoughts on kind of that battle that's going on between Harrell and Tad Hudson? Because I do think it's two guys that have a lot of potential and have a really nice intangibles. And I think they also each provide something a little bit different.
Yeah, I need to see them more, be honest with you. I would be BSing if I said a whole lot. I've watched Connor a little bit in practice. I watched Tad a little bit last week. in practice. I can go by what Dean has said about him and some of the things that I've been told, off the record or something like that. So I do think that what they like about both of them is that they're very smart. Connor Harrell was valedictorian.
Yeah.
National Honor Society valedictorian, and he's a competitive winner. He's one of those guys that, going back to what I was saying on defense about Cedric Gray and Rucker and so forth, he's a guy that could play above the grade, above what the rating is. He was a 3-star. Dina pushed for a 4th. It doesn't make sense that he wasn't a 4th. He led his high school, Thompson High School, and I think it was Thompson, to 2 straight state championships in Alabama at the highest class. Alabama's got really good high school football.
Absolutely.
Especially in the highest class. That's everybody remembers Hoover. They're in that group too. So he's really good, and he has played in very competitive environments, and he's a winner. And he's a valedictorian, super smart guy, and he's someone that will cross all the T's and dot all the I's as a quarterback should, like Drake May does. He could be the leader. He can be the guy that commands the room. He can be the guy that everybody can count on and is never going to screw up because there's something lacks in his approach. That's never going to be the case. The question is, can he make all the throws in a game situation? And also, does he fit Chip Lindsey's offense? There's a little bit more pro style. People will see with the offense next year. Chip has talked a couple of times about some drops. Like Drake's working on footwork in part because they're doing more drops. They brought in Clyde Christensen, who Chip said yesterday, he coached guys under center most of the time. Like Brady under center and all these other dudes that Peyton Manning, they aren't just in shotgun all the time. And one of the reasons that he's there is because the drop. A lot of these quarterbacks in high school, when was the last time you saw a high school quarterback under center that wasn't in a goal line situation?
It's all out of the
They
gun,
just sit back there, catch the ball, turn and look. They don't have to step drop. Go back and look at tape just 15 years ago, college football. There's the 3-step drop, the 5-step drop, the 7-step drop. So Drake's working, they added a little bit of that. So can Connor be that guy? I think when you have a little bit more pro style stuff, height becomes a little bit more of an issue as well. And Connor's just a little over 6 feet tall. But he's smart. He runs well. We saw him in practice last week where there was a play that broke down, and he just darted up the gut for a touchdown, and that was quick. That was the kind of quickness that Sam didn't have, that Drake doesn't have, that Marquise Williams didn't have. I'm trying to think of the guys that ran a lot at quarterback. It was quicker. So I think it's a wait and see on him, and he's certainly someone that will probably be a starting quarterback in college somewhere, and perhaps it's at North Carolina. As far as Tad goes, Tad's young. He's new. He's a true freshman who enrolled early. He's a guy that they said looks really good one day, maybe not so good the other. Looks like a true freshman, so it's a wait and see with him. But he's got a big-time arm. He's bigger than Harrell. He's thicker than Harrell. He lost a little bit of weight before he got to Carolina, so there's a concerted effort to build the body there. And I do think that that's going to be a process for him. But I wouldn't yet say that we were maybe given the impression that Jacoby Criswell was so good because the impression that there was a battle right up to the last week of the fall camp. And I'm not convinced that was 100% the case. So people are like, wow, Jacoby almost beat out Drake. Well, he must be incredible. I think Jacoby is really good. And I think he's going to be really good at Arkansas. No doubt about that. I'm not sure Connor or Tad are quite yet Jacoby Criswell. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done at that spot. And one of the things that Mac always pitches to us when he talks about the backup quarterbacks, we need to find the guy who's going to go on the field if something happens to Drake now. We also need to find our quarterback for 2024 because Drake won't be back. No. He'll be one of the first picks in the NFL draft. So I do think people may say it's just a backup quarterback, but I'm going to report a lot on it because I think it's a very serious thing because they need to know who the quarterback is going to be in 24 as well. And so if they're not convinced it's one of these guys, they're probably going to have to go to the portal because they missed out on their first couple of targets for the class of 24. They would have gotten Mabry Matauer because he hitched his wagon to Phil Longo, but Longo went to Wisconsin. Matauer committed to Wisconsin. They weren't really ever in the true running for Jaden Davis. I do think they thought they could get Merklinger, who ended up committing to Tennessee here last week. I think that was a little bit of a disappointment. So it's getting a little bit harder for them to have an opportunity to bring in a true freshman who could be Sam Part 2, basically, and start as a true freshman. So I think there's a big question mark about that position mark after Drake leaves. Right now, as long as Drake's healthy, that's as good a quarterback room as anybody in the country outside of Southern Cal.
Yeah, not a bad guy to learn under if you're Tad and Harold too. I mean, it's invaluable reps being able to play and practice, more consistently under a guy like Drake May, because he really is that good. So yeah, very fascinating battle to kind of see, and good on you for mentioning not only this year but next year as well, because Drake will be gone, and they do need somebody to step up in that room, not just be like, yeah, we'll go with you because you've been okay or a little bit better than the other guy. That's not what they're looking for. Wide receiver room. Chip Lindsey had some interesting quotes on Andre Green, said he's made a lot of progress this spring. And I think, in particular over the last week or so has really shown in practice just his natural athletic ability. Some of the glimpses we saw in the Holiday Bowl against Oregon, as well as he made some big plays in that game too. So I think that's exciting. We already know what Tez Walker and Nate McCullum will bring into that room. Experience, really good guys who we expect to start. And you even got guys like Kobe Paysour, who looked really good in the open practice a week ago. Gavin Blackwell made a few plays there as well. And heck, I'm not even talking about a guy like JJ Jones, who's missing some time this spring too. And I know I'm missing a few guys. That's a room that goes deep. So what's your thoughts on that room? Because to me, it's in a really good position. And also it might be the deepest group, at least right now, that they've had over the last 4 years in terms of being able to kind of go maybe 8 deep and feel good about it instead of going maybe 6 deep and feeling okay about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the only concern they have about that room is how they're going to fill out the pecking order, 1 through however many end up.
And that's a great problem to have.
In the rotation. Yeah. So I think number 1 is going to be Tez Walker. I don't think any doubt about that.
I think so too, yeah.
2 is going to be Nate McCullum or Kobe Paysour. Mm-hmm. Kobe's going to be really, really good.
I think so as well.
And then after that, then 3 will be whoever's not 2, and then you go on down the line. They want to play 6. That's sort of their goal. I asked Chip about that yesterday, and he said that he and Lonnie were just talking the other day. So look, they think they've got 6, and you definitely want to have 6 to roll in there, because they also view the tight ends as wide receivers in some ways, because they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel and they throw a lot to them. All 3 of them can run routes and catch the ball and turn up field and get extra yardage. So when people say, oh, just 6 receivers, but understand the tight ends are going to be a heavy part of the pass game. And they're also going to throw more to the running backs out of the backfield. Chip said that's absolutely something he's done in the past, and he's got the dudes to do it now, which is one of the reasons that George Pettaway will remain competing in the mix, because I think that he might be the most capable running back catching the ball out of the backfield. Yeah. And that's going to be a very, very valuable weapon for this team. I really think that Andre Green is someone that he's a perfect example, Jacob, of someone that the fans expect, well, he's a 4-star, borderline 5-star. Why is he playing? He should just step on the field and be a great player. But I really think that he's a great example of, once you leave high school and you step into college, it's a different world. Yeah. And you have to, for a lot of these guys, they have to rebuild all their confidence again. They have to have new confidence. He had all the confidence he ever needed in high school. It was swag city. But then he steps into college and then he looks around the room and there's 84 of the guys on scholarship that were like him in high school.
Yeah.
So a lot of dudes have no problem. A lot of dudes, it takes a little bit more time. They have their own process. Every one of them has their own process. So for Andre, who was banged up a little bit last year, had a lower back injury that hampered him some, he did play a lot in the bowl game, played pretty well. And his biggest thing is fighting through the confidence, because as Chip Lindsey said, man, and I'm paraphrasing, if his head is clear and he's confident, that means he's going to allow his natural gifts to take over. And I think that's what they're working toward, because when his natural gifts take over, you're talking about a dude that has big time NFL talent. Mm-hmm. But you have to let the NFL talent free. You have to open up the cage and let the NFL talent free and let it flow and do its thing. And when he gets to the point where he's consistently doing that on every rep, I think he's a guy that could do a lot of stuff for this football team. They have enough length at receiver, although I think they'd like to have a little bit more. And they certainly have 2 dudes that could be phenomenal at slot and Paysor and McCollum, and they're going to play them both together too. Paysor's Kobe said the other day that he's working a lot at wideout. And he said he's got to learn it because it's different, because at slot, you never have to deal with press coverage. But at wideout, you do. So he says it's a little bit of a learning curve for him. But Max said the wide receiver group is the least of their concerns.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, pass catchers at least, because tight end as well. So the passing aspect of this team could be in incredible shape, provided they get protection up front.
Yeah.
If Drake has protection up front, I think this club might be more prolific than last year. And let's face it, last year they weren't as prolific as people thought. So I think they have a chance to kind of raise the bar on that on a more consistent basis this year. Don't have a 63-point game or whatever it was skew your numbers. You have a lot of 63-point games against certain teams. I could see this team getting in the mid-40s into the 50s a few times.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I think that wide receiver room's absolutely stacked, and like you said, they've got a problem there, but it's a good problem to have, because they're just trying to figure out who they're going to be able to put on the field, because again, not everybody can play. Last position I want to talk about on offense, running back room. I was looking at some of Chip Lindsey's quotes and some of the things you had in your write-up, and maybe I'm reading between the lines here incorrectly, but from what he said about Omarion Hampton and Elijah Green, are those the two guys that are kind of leading the way in that room right now? Because I know Caleb Hood's in there and he's really good, and I know we've talked about Petaway as well.
Until Caleb and British are allowed to have contact, I don't think we can really say that. And I did get a note from UNC today about British is taking the next step forward.
I almost forgot about
more
British
stuff,
Brooks.
doing stuff in practice. It's still no contact, still no scrimmaging, but he's getting closer and he's getting a lot of important reps. I don't know how he's going to factor in. I don't know how Caleb's going to factor in. Caleb Hood is sort of the Puff Johnson of the football team.
Just can't stay healthy.
He gets hurt a lot. He has a stretch where you're like, wow, that guy's pretty good. All of a sudden, he's in street clothes. So the reliability factor is definitely. I do think what was telling that Chip said was that Omari, and I'm paraphrasing, but sneer quote is fits our offense, because this is a run downhill offense. I know coaches say that all the time. This is a run downhill offense, because if you go back and look at the associations that Chip has had at prior stops, including at Central Florida, and if you look at what Troy did, there was a lot of intent for downhill running. So you've got to have the dudes to do the downhill running. You have to execute up front. But I do think Omarion fits more of that, because that's the hole, Omarion. Go just run through that hole.
Yeah.
And I think last year what happened with, well, I know for a fact this happened. A source confirmed to me, a very, very good source confirmed to me that, that part of the problem was, because he had 100-yard games in two of the first three games, part of the problem was that his vision, he had to learn how to see things better. And he was relying just on instincts. So in an attempt to make him more refined, some things maybe weighed him down a little bit psychologically. So the instincts sometimes can be quashed when you're in the middle of a learning phase. You ever see in baseball, a guy changes position. Sometimes he doesn't hit for a while. He just goes into a slump. I'm sure it's like that with a lot of other sports. So in football, when you're really harping on certain aspects of someone's game that needs to be smoothed over and fortified, that gets such emphasis that maybe some of the other things aren't there. So there were some things that happened last year with respect to Omar in that front, and that's all behind. That's all no longer an issue, no longer a point of discussion. And I think that Chip Lindsey's offense fits someone like him. Elijah Green is someone that did pretty well when he came back last year, but nothing great.
He never really claimed that spot as his own.
Yeah, and the expectation of him going in was that, he'd be RB1 when spring began, but the expectation is that he wouldn't have been RB1. He wouldn't eventually be it. He'd maybe not even 2 or 3. That he helped when he had an opportunity, did a solid job. He was a good Band-Aid during that period. But in order for this team to blossom, they need the 4 stars, Hampton and Petaway, to do their thing. They need Hood, who's a baller when he's healthy, to do his thing. And I think British is still going to be more a special teams captain and maybe a role guy in a running back room. But there's Elijah still sitting there, and he's such a smart guy, and he's a determined guy, and he stuck it out, didn't jump the gun and leave. So there's something to say for that. And a lot of times those guys end up winning out, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. No, I think they're in really good shape at that running back room too. It's always just been a case of kind of like, all right, come on, guys, like somebody step up and take this spot as their own. It felt like Caleb Hood did that for a little bit last year, got hurt, like you said. It felt like Elijah Green had the opportunity, played well at times, but also didn't really make it his own. And then Hampton and Petaway were always the guys that, as true freshmen, were going to have a little bit of a learning curve, but really high end and a lot of potential. And guys that in the scrimmage we saw a couple of weeks ago, both made some plays. Petaway made a couple guys fall in particular. So again, I think they're in a really good spot in that room. Last thing, AJ, we're going to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up just real quickly. Spring game announced April 15th, 3 p.m. Seems like it's going to be a little bit similar of a format to what we saw last year, which I thought was really fun, and I thought it allowed fans to interact more, and it just felt like a little bit less formal. But in my opinion, I think people, and especially the media, can get a little bit more out of this format. So just your final thoughts on the spring game being confirmed.
Go out and see the guys. There's 19 new players this spring, which is incredible when you think about the 10 early enrollees and whatever was it, 10?
I think that's right.
Are all for a while, yeah. And then they have 9 portal guys.
Yeah.
And most of the portal guys are playing. Most of the early enrollees are playing. So come out and take a look at Elijah Huzzy yourself. There's some portal guys that you need to embrace as being North Carolina players, and that you're going to see a lot in the fall. Yeah. Huzzy's going to start. Man. Yeah, Huzzy's going to start. He's a really good player. He's an upgrade from what they lost. Gainer just, man, that guy's a football player.
I'm excited to see what he can do on this team, because he really does seem like he checks all the boxes.
Next year, we were watching him practice. We were watching him follow Chiswick around, and Brandon started talking about, he's like, looks like a guy that could play in the 80s or 90s with the neck roll and all that kind of stuff. I just said he's a guy that can make the worst uniform in college football look really good.
Yeah.
He's just got that whole it about him. Uh-huh. And then Tez Walker on offense. Also McCollum. McCollum, you'll be able to see him because the hair. He's got the hair out of the helmet, so he's easy to pick out. But he and Walker play different positions, and they'll be on the field a lot. I do think it's likely that they're the top 2 receivers. Walker, though, is really, really good. Mm-hmm. Really, really good. It was Elijah Huzzy or Kobe Paysor said the other day that he burns everybody. That's quote. He burns everybody. Just gets by him.
Gone.
So come out and watch those guys. Take a look at them. And I don't know. I like the way they do it now. I think it's more fun. The spring game can get boring because a lot of guys are out there playing and people are leaning back. They're like the non-diehards, and very few diehards even know all the names on the roster. They're like, who's that guy? Well, that guy's not going to play next fall. I don't want to see him right now. Mm-hmm. So you come out and watch this thing, and they're doing a lot of drills. You could just look around and watch whatever group you want for a while. Yeah, I love that. When I do videos from practice, I just keep it on one thing for like 2 minutes and then I run it. Mm-hmm. It's very raw, but I like it because I want people to see what it's like the whole time there, not just the highlights, but the in-between stuff I really like as well. You get a chance to see that when you go. So I encourage all football fans to go check it out. And if you're a youth football coach or a player or high school or something like that, go watch the drills they do. Yeah. You get a chance to see what a major college football team, all the different drills that they do, that makes them better. And they have some different drills this year than they had before, especially the offensive line, which I love. Mm-hmm. I love those drills that they do. So come check that stuff out. And if you see it, say hey.
Yeah. And I mean,
ask Jacob for his autograph.
Yeah, heck, man. I do.
Ask Dina. Dina's the one that would get stopped by everybody.
Yeah. I've had a couple people ask for pictures, which is, incredibly flattering, but I don't understand it. I'm like, what the heck you want to take a picture with me for, man? Yeah. I just talk on a podcast.
Miss King, may I have your autograph? Yeah, I can get you. You got a pen? I don't carry no pen with me.
Hey, Jad,
Can I get a selfie? Yeah, I'll take selfie with you.
You know what? I'm glad you did that impression, AJ, because we haven't had a Dina impression from you on a podcast in a while.
I've been chomping at the bit to get one out, man. I got one out. And I feel so much better now. It's like this sense of relief just kind of went from head to toe because I got a Dina-ism out.
It's spot on, too. God, is it spot on. If you called me on the phone on Dina's phone and talk like that, I would have no clue it wasn't Dina, to be honest with you, man. It's a 10 out of 10 impression, man. I don't know where you got that skill. We need to get her on one of these to impersonate me. That would be very interesting to see if she could do that. I don't know if she could do it, man. I think the accent's too thick. I don't know if she could work through it, man. It's one of a kind.
She would do stuff like, come on, I need this certain time. Oh my God, breaking news. She'd go into the whole thing about how
Oh yeah,
anal I
she'd
can
have
be
plenty
about
of
content.
ammunition. She'd have plenty of ammunition. Don't get it twisted,
Yeah.
man. That's for sure.
You do too much. You work too hard. You need time for yourself.
I think I've heard at least 3 of those lines from Dina when talking about you from time to time. So yeah, again, you're spot on with that, man. So yeah, come if you do see us at the spring game. In all seriousness, come say hi, come say what's up. And again, I was gonna say this too. Like it's pretty free. I know it's free entry, but like go down to the front row so you can hear some of these coaches talking, some of the players talking. You hear kind of a little bit more that what goes into the drills, because that's really the fun part of being there for something like this. So yeah, looking forward to seeing some people there, and it should be a fun
you'll be
afternoon.
on the field shooting. You'll be on the field shooting.
I'm praying it's a nice day too, because we've had some.
Yeah.
It seems like it's either going to be really nice or it's going to be cold and rainy for whatever reason.
Yeah, a little bit of advice. Kevin Roy will be down there shooting as well. Don't say anything to him.
Yeah, avoid at all costs, right?
He's a nasty SOB. Don't say anything to him.
If you see Kevin, just ignore him, right? Just walk the other way.
If the Braves lose the night before, give him crap about it. If you want to see a video guy go viral.
Yeah. If you guys want to go viral at Kenan Stadium that day, just say something to Kevin about the Braves if they lose. And if not, then maybe just talk shit anyway and see what happens. But again, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of the UNC football show. So much to talk about, so much to discuss. And I'm sure we'll be back with another one either next week or the week after, because there's so many things going on right now with spring football. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. Make sure you check out myperfectfranchise.net too. And I will link the podcast AJ did with Andy a few months ago below as well, because I think if you want to get a better understanding of what it is and you want to get a little better understanding of who Andy is, really good guy, you can tell by these podcasts. So again, go check them out, myperfectfranchise.net. Put your life and career in your own hands. And again, if you're thinking about doing it, you're never going to have the right time to do it. Take the leap, do it now. And I promise Andy will be there every step of the way. Appreciate y'all watching. See you in the next one. Thanks.